Okay. All right, just one update for all of you at the top. President is obviously quite focused on the American Jobs Plan that he just announced last week. As you all know, he's already had 2 bipartisan congressional meetings on infrastructure in the Oval Office, and he plans to continue speaking with leaders from both sides of the aisle to get their input, either on the phone this week or when they return. He looks forward to welcoming members to the Oval Office again. And this work is being supported, of course, by the Jobs Cabinet. Many of you may have seen members of the Jobs Cabinet out over the weekend speaking on your airwaves directly to the American people. And the Jobs Cabinet members have also been active and engaging with members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, and they will continue to play that role over the course of the coming weeks and months. So Jobs Cabinet members to date have made 56 calls to the 28 Democrats and 28 Republicans who are the chairs and ranking members on relevant committees. We've held briefings with the entire House and Senate invited. The House briefing had 124 representatives on, including 31 Republicans. Senior White House officials have briefed bipartisan working groups in both chambers, including the group of 20 senators and the Problem Solvers Caucus. And as I noted, the President looks forward to welcoming members when they return next week. With that, Alex, go ahead.
Great, thanks. I have a couple of questions on the infrastructure and jobs plan, and one on immigration.
Okay.
To start, the jobs plan has been receiving opposition from both the left and the right. On the right this weekend, Senator Roy Blunt said that it would be an easy bipartisan win if the bill were more narrowly focused. So why not reduce the bill down to just infrastructure and take out planks like the care workers and the electric vehicle aspects? And then in addition to that, on the left, Senator Joe Manchin said today that he can't support a 28% tax increase on corporations. So is the White House open to lowering that? He said the highest he would support is 25%.
Well, first, on the infrastructure question, let me say that some Republicans who have been vocal think investing in water systems and replacing pipes so Americans can have clean drinking water is not infrastructure, but the President does. Some don't think investing in high-speed rail is infrastructure. The President does. Some believe building charging stations to support America's electric vehicle future is not infrastructure. He believes it is. Some don't believe that America's broadband capacity, which is 1/3 of the American people, I should say, don't have access to broadband, and improving those lines and expanding that access is not infrastructure. The President does. Some believe that addressing the issue of America's supply chain so that we're never again at the mercy of China or any other nation is not investing in infrastructure. The President disagrees. Some don't believe that rebuilding schools so that they're safe and asbestos-free is investing in infrastructure. The President disagrees. And finally, some don't think that building a support system to take care of elderly parents or kids with disabilities at home so people can go back into the workforce. Some of those 2 million women who have left the workforce during the pandemic, some think that that is not investing in the infrastructure, our workforce of this country that are the backbone of this country. The President disagrees. But with all that being said, he welcomes their ideas, hopes they put them forward, and he looks forward to having conversations with members of both parties about how to address the long outdated effort to update our infrastructure.
And then on Manchin, is the White House open to reducing the corporate tax rate?
Well, first, the President felt it was responsible to propose a way to pay for his proposal. That's exactly what he did. He knows some members think it's too big, some think it's too small. Frankly, there have been folks who have come out on both sides, which we fully expected. He knows that some will come forward with different ways to pay for this package, and some may have views that it shouldn't be paid for at all. So we fully expect that from Senator Manchin and other members, and we expect the question of how to pay for the package, if we should pay for the package, to be part of the discussion moving forward.
The White House is open to that conversation.
We're open to hearing ideas and proposals from members, and we encourage them to put them forward.
And then on immigration, we released a poll earlier today that suggests that 25% of Americans, only 25%, approve of the way that the President is handling the situation at the border with respect to unaccompanied minors. So Does this poll suggest that the president needs to reevaluate his approach to that issue?
Well, if I read the poll correctly, it also had 59% of Americans believing that unaccompanied children should be treated safely and be protected in that way, and 65% supported the reunification of families. There's no question this is a difficult challenge, and the president believes he was elected to address hard problems. And his focus right now is on expediting processing at the border, opening up additional facilities, addressing the root causes, and restarting programs to incentivize kids from applying from within their countries. So that's his focus right now.
Is the issue just a messaging issue then? I mean, how do you explain the fact that Americans are not in favor of what the president is doing at the border?
I'm not sure that's an accurate depiction of the poll, given that there was about 1/3 of the people who replied didn't have an opinion at all. So
40% said that they did not approve them.
Fair, but also 1/3 said they had no view. So I think that right now our focus is not on looking at the poll. It is on implementing solutions, which is no question to address what we view as no question a difficult challenge, and hoping that we can ensure we are protecting these kids. We are continuing to reassert to the region the border is not open. The majority of adults who come to the border are turned away. Continuing to implement programs in the region, whether it's working with them to address root causes or working with them to restart programs that can help kids from apply within country, that we feel those are the ways we can help address what is no question a challenging issue. Go ahead.
Thanks. First I want to ask about the budget. What's the holdup on releasing it?
We expect it to be soon. It's not the full budget, as you know, but just for clarity purposes, it's a kind of discretionary guidance. But we hope it to be soon. That it will be soon. We expect it to be very soon. I don't have a timeline on that quite yet.
Well, every previous White House has released at least a budget blueprint or an outline, abbreviated budget, by the end of February. So what's the holdup here? Why is the delay now stretching into April?
Well, there's no question, as we talked about during the transition, that we dealt with some impactful intransigence from the outgoing political appointees. We had some cooperation from the career staff, but we didn't have all of the information that we needed. As you all know, we also don't have a budget director. We have not had a budget director confirmed. We have now an acting budget director, which is an important step forward. But again, we expect it to be soon, and as soon as we have a timeline, we will make sure you all know.
I also want to ask you a question about Major League Baseball. The league decided to move its All-Star game out of Atlanta. That's something that the president said he supported before. Does he then agree with their decision to move that game out of Atlanta under the voting law?
Well, I wish I had had this with me on Friday, because I got asked a question, and there's just some help, what I thought would be helpful context, and I know you probably don't have the transcript in front of you. So when the president was asked during an ESPN interview last week, he was asked the question, last week, Major League Baseball Players Association executive director said that he would look forward to discussing moving the All-Star game from Atlanta in the wake of Georgia's governor signing into law a bill passed by the Republican-led state legislature to overhaul how its state elections are run. How do you view this possibility of moving the All-Star game out of Georgia? And he said, quote, "I think today's professional athletes are acting incredibly responsible. I would strongly support them doing that." So he was not dictating for what Major League Baseball should do, that they should, dictating they should move the All-Star game. That was their decision. They made that decision, and as he stated earlier, he certainly supports that.
So he does support the decision to move the game then?
Well, he supports them being able to make the decision and respond to what their players' asks are, given many of them are impacted, of course, by these laws.
Okay, and then just one more on vaccines. So there's a report over the weekend that Governor DeSantis in Florida had been dealing with some sort of improper dealings with the supermarket chain Publix as far as distributing the vaccine. So did those reports give the White House any pause in working with Governor DeSantis in the vaccine program?
Well, first let me say that for those who weren't following this in Florida, one of the concerns we've had as we've watched the data is that 17% of Florida's population is African American, but less than 7% of vaccinations have gone to African Americans in the state. That's one of the reasons that we opened 4 FEMA sites in Miami, Tampa, Jacksonville, and Orlando. And these sites disproportionately serve communities of color. So we've been closely watching this data and these statistics as we would in any state across the country, and we took these specific actions for that purpose. We are not going to hurt the people of Florida just because of the steps or actions of leadership, and we will continue to take actions to ensure that the vaccine is equitably distributed. Go ahead.
Just to follow up on the baseball All-Star game, I know that you made the point that he did not dictate the league move the All-Star game out of Georgia, but he likes to say the words of a president matter. He said he would strongly support if players in the league wanted to do that, and they did it. So does he think that the PGA should move the Masters tournament that begins this week out of Georgia?
I'm not here to call for anyone on behalf of the president or the vice president or anyone to take steps in reaction to the law in Georgia. The president was asked a direct question, and the context of the question was also around the league meeting to discuss this exact issue, and he answered the question.
So then should we believe that if PGA Tour players who are arriving in Augusta this week or today to register for the tournament, if they got together and decided or talked about not participating, that is something he would strongly support? Or is there a difference between...
I'm sure you will ask me that question or him this question, but our focus is on doing what we can to advocate for making voting easier and more accessible around the country. And that's where our efforts are going to be from the White House.
Before the president said that he would strongly support moving the All-Star game out of Georgia, did he consider the economic impact? Because the Cobb County tourism CEO is saying they're going to lose $100 million in lost business activity, 8,000 hotel rooms. Did he think about that before he said he would strongly support the move?
Again, he was doing an interview. He was given the context, as I just read out to you in full detail of how the question was asked. He answered the question.
Okay, on immigration, 171,000 migrants were caught at the border in March. That's up from 100,000 in February. If the trend continues, do you have a sense of how many migrants the United States can handle this month?
Well, first let me say that there have been numbers that have been reported out there. CBP has not released their final numbers. We expect that to happen later this week. And for full context, there are numbers that when they release them will be out, like you cited, some version of what you cited. But those are reflecting of people coming, and we should also be reflecting, and I hope I'm encouraging people to do this, people who are turned away. Because again, single adults, based on your own reporting and everyone's reporting, the vast majority continue to be turned away at the border. I don't have any predictions about numbers that will come. We're obviously taking steps, as I addressed in response to Alex's question, to address the root causes, put in place programs that people can utilize to apply from in country, send a clear message the border is not open and that we're turning away the majority of adults when they come to the border.
There is a separate report that, speaking about the adults, there are 1,000 gotaways, mostly in Arizona, people who are seen, detected, but they're not chased because authorities are so busy processing the families. The Washington Post is reporting that some of these people are carrying drugs. Has the administration maybe reached out to Mexico to try to stop the flow of drugs or help stop the flow of drugs into American communities?
That's always a part of our diplomatic conversations, certainly through the State Department and other entities within the government. I'm happy to check on that specific reporting. I had not seen that report since before I came out here.
Okay.
Great. Go ahead, Kelly.
In clarifying today, are you trying to roll back what the president said about the All-Star game?
No, I'm trying to articulate clearly to everyone what he said and what the context of his remarks were, the question that was asked, and the full scope of his answer. And I think it's been shorthanded to no one's fault because it's been repeated a bit without the full context.
And Mitch McConnell says that we are witnessing a coordinated campaign by powerful and wealthy people to mislead and to use the bully pulpit about this law. Will the White House say explicitly that it is not trying to influence corporations or organizations to take action on state level decisions like this?
We've conveyed it, and I'm happy to answer your question directly. We've not asked corporations to take specific actions. That's not our focus here. Our focus is on and continuing to convey that it's important that voting is easier, not harder, that when there are laws in place that make it harder, we certainly express an opposition to those laws.
A couple of foreign policy questions. It's now April 5th. The Afghanistan decision is due soon. Obviously, troops and their families are interested to know what the president's decision will be. What more does he need before he can make or announce this decision?
Well, as the president has said before, it will be tough to meet the May 1st deadline for full withdrawal for logistical reasons. We are continuing, he's continuing to consult internally with his national security team and advisors, and of course also with our partners and allies. And, he's been working on these issues, foreign policy issues, national security issues for several decades now, and of course wants to take the time to make the right decision.
So our expectation should be that it'll go beyond May 1st with the tough to meet portion of your answer.
He set the expectation it will be tough for a full withdrawal for logistical reasons by that timeline. And that certainly has also something that we've conveyed clearly to our partners as well. But in terms of what's next, he just wants to take the time to make a decision.
What's the president's level of concern about what's happening in Jordan? Long an important country, an ally, and a buffer against some of the hotter events in that part of the world. Is this something where he would have any direct interaction at this point?
I would expect it would be through the State Department and wouldn't expect that. We're, of course, closely following the reports out of Jordan. We've been in touch as an administration with Jordanian officials. King Abdullah is a key partner of the United States. He has our full support. Go ahead.
So on Ukraine, we talked about this on Friday, but the State Department has now asked Russia to explain these provocations. Does the president have any plans to reach out to President Putin on this? Is it elevated to that level of concern?
I don't have any calls with President Putin to predict at this point in time. Last week, it was read out that that our Secretary of State had a conversation with his counterpart. Also, the Secretary of Defense had a conversation with his counterpart. We remain concerned by the recent escalations of Russian aggression and provocative actions in eastern Ukraine. That's something we're watching closely. Of course, we're aware of the Ukrainian military reports concerning Russian troop movements on Ukraine's border. But at this point, we've been in touch at the Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense level, which is pretty high, as we all know. But I don't have any calls from the president to predict for you.
And just one more.
And he, of course, spoke with the president of Ukraine on Friday as well. So
That's right, yeah.
about this specific issue.
Yeah. So on the tax front, I understand that you're not willing to sort of close in on a specific number that you might agree with Joe Manchin. But have you done a detailed analysis of what the delta would be, say if you agreed to 25%? How much less income revenue would that distribute? Are you doing that kind of in a detailed analysis in preparation for these negotiations?
Well, first I think it's important to remind people that the corporate tax rate we're proposing is lower than it was in 2017. In fact, it's lower than it was from World War II until 2017. So we are still proposing a rate that is lower than it has been for the vast majority of time since anyone in this room was alive, I think, or around that amount of time. So that's our proposal. Of course, what the president proposed, raising it to 28%, and combined with the other tax proposals, would pay for the totality of the package. That's why he felt it was a responsible proposal to make. Sorry, this person was throwing me off outside for a second, but everything's fine. So that he felt it was responsible to make. There will be different ideas for pay-fors, right? There will be different ideas for tax proposals. That will all need to be weighed by a range of questions with Congress and with leaders in Congress and outspoken members in Congress about whether it should be paid for, over what period of time, how much should be paid for, what the options are for paying for it. There's some that are proposing, as you all know, SALT deductions in other areas that are not revenue raisers. So this will be all a part of the discussion, and absolutely our economic team and numbered data crunchers will be crunching numbers as we proceed, but we're kind of in the early stage of these discussions at this point in time.
Just real quickly on OMB, you mentioned that we don't have a budget director yet. When do you anticipate that the president will nominate someone to replace Neera Tanden? And then I have one more quick international one.
Sure, and I should have conveyed, which I did, but I will reiterate, we of course have an acting OMB director, Shilon Young, who is beloved by Capitol Hill, as you all know. And so she is, of course, playing a very important role, but we didn't have one for some period of time because she was only recently confirmed as the deputy and now the acting. I don't have a personal update for you in terms of the timeline for formally nominating a replacement on OMB.
A lot of people have said that they think Shalanda Young should just get the job. I mean, that she should be nominated for the #1 job. Can you say anything more on that?
I would just say the president thinks so highly of her that he has nominated her to serve as the deputy director of OMB, which is also an enormous job. But I've been here long enough not to make predictions of where he will land on a personnel announcement.
On the international front, so the
Yeah.
IMF and the World Bank are
Yeah.
meeting this week. This is a big deal internationally. One of the issues that has come up is a sort of a need to expand the debt relief initiatives to beyond countries that are just the poorest countries. That there are significant numbers of countries that are, middle-income countries. Is this something that the president is willing to take on, and is this a message that he wants his officials to send during these important meetings?
Well, there's no question that the COVID-19 pandemic has deepened global economic inequality. And as has already been announced by the Treasury Department, we are working, the U.S., the United States, is working with IMF management and other members toward a $650 billion general allocation to IMF member countries. It's part of a package of broader international efforts to support the global recovery. Also includes robust support for the IMF, multilateral development banks, debt relief in some cases, all alongside countries taking necessary reform steps. So we're working closely with the IMF and other member countries, given we are all working through the impact of a global pandemic.
You don't want to say anything about expanding the universe of countries that are going to get help? Because right now it's limited to just the poor countries.
Yeah,
Poorest countries.
I would point you to the Treasury Department for more specifics beyond that. Go ahead, Ann.
So one thing quickly, and then I have something else. Is there any update on when you or the president will release his latest medical records, or any update on his plans to visit his medical provider?
I don't have an update. I'm happy to check with our team and see if there's one we can provide you all soon, in short order.
Anything more precise than soon?
I'll have to check with the team and before I give you a specific timeline of when we'll have that available.
And then back on the MLB question, given that, as you say, the president supports the ability to make this decision, does he also support other organizations or businesses making similar moves, which I guess would broadly be called boycotting other events in other states should they pass similar laws? I'm thinking here of Arizona and others that may be considering similar voting restriction laws.
That's not something we're calling for from the White House. Our focus is on working with Congress to put in place voting rights legislation, working with leaders who, like Stacey Abrams and others, who are advocating for more expanded laws and more expanded information out to people to make it easier to vote. So that's really where our efforts are focused.
Although, I mean, some of this may be moving at a faster pace in these states than you're going to be able to get an omnibus national voting rights law passed. So there will be there'll be inflection moments here between now and then where other organizations would be looking at making the same kinds of decisions that MLB made. Does the president think they should be able to make those decisions to pull out?
Well, I mean, broadly speaking, of course, the president and we all believe private sector entities are going to make decisions, and that's their role to do so. What I'm conveying, what I can speak to is what our focus is on and what our role is here from the White House and what his energies will be directed toward, which is voting rights legislation, continuing to voice and advocate for the need to make it easier and not harder to vote. That's where he will be spending his time and effort, as will we in the White House.
And then lastly, on Iran, with the indirect talks beginning tomorrow, I mean, here it is the first week of April. This is a foreign policy priority.
of the president's throughout the campaign, really one of the very few specific things he said he wanted to do. Is he disappointed that it has taken this long to get to what isn't even a face-to-face negotiation? And does he think that there is still time to pull a deal together before Iranian elections in June?
Well, he knows from living through it, as do you from covering it for many years, that diplomacy can take time, and sometimes it is not at the pace that everyone would prefer. And we certainly have experience, as does he, from having been in the Obama-Biden administration, of the time it took to work through a diplomatic process. I don't have a prediction to make in terms of how long it will take. You're right that, of course, what is happening in the coming days is really focused on indirect talks that are happening through the Europeans. That is still, in our view, a step forward toward diplomacy, and that remains our first objective.
And does his position remain that the U.S. will not drop any sanctions until Iran returns to full compliance?
Well, his position hasn't changed on how he's approaching, or we should approach, the negotiations, and we certainly expect that the primary issues that will be discussed over the course of the coming days are the nuclear steps that Iran would need to take in order to return to compliance with the terms of the JCPOA, and the sanctions relief steps that the United States would need to take in order to return to compliance as well. But we're just at the beginning of the talks, and we don't anticipate presently that there will be direct talks between the United States and Iran through this process, though we remain certainly open to that prospect. Go ahead. I'll come back to you, Caitlin. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You mentioned last week on infrastructure that you'd like to see progress on the bill by Memorial Day. I'm wondering if you can just define progress. What do you want to see happen by Memorial Day?
I don't think I'm going to define progress more than, we hope members will be proposing ideas. We hope that there will be constructive discussions. We hope that there'll be committees meeting, but we'll leave it to Hill leadership to define what progress looks like.
Back on Senator Blunt's proposal about a smaller package, is it out of the question for the White House to split up the infrastructure package, or is that something the president would be willing to do?
Well, we certainly expected, and it has played out, that some will believe that the package we proposed is too small,